Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. So Neville earlier released a wrap-up of Mobile World Congress 2023, which took place in early January. So the video is on this article, which I will leave in the description down below. I watched the entire video, so you guys don't have to. But if you want to, you may watch the video. I want to make this very clear before I continue with everything else, because there's still a lot of talk about LTE still has this amount of legs left, LTE this, and yes, it does, but not for T-Mobile. Can't say much about AT&T and Verizon right now because that's up in the air, but T-Mobile, and he made this clear during the presentation, you may tune into it if you like, they are finished with LTE. They're done. That's it. They're not gonna make further improvements to LTE. They're not gonna build LTE only small cells. That's a thing of the past. They are a 5G business, and he made that very clear that in his succession planning with Ulf, which they've probably been planning this for several years now, that's the direction that the company's moving in. So this is what I have been told several months back on how they're going to approach this, because of course they need a fallback network and LTE will remain, but this is how they're going to do it. And I think I mentioned this before in another video. I hear in markets where they have band 12, that 5 megahertz channel will be left on LTE. In markets where they don't own band 12, AWS will be left 5 megahertz on an LTE channel in those markets. And they're doing that to continue to operate IoT and to continue operating the smartwatches that are not capable of 5G yet. As soon as those devices are starting to cycle and there's 5G availability, that's probably going to be the end for LTE. This will probably, at least for T-Mobile, this will be the fastest transition off of, turning off a prior technology that we've likely ever seen, right? During LTE, we still had HSPA, we still had 3G, we still had 2G, and Edge and all that was still up and operational, right? That is no longer going to be the case, at least for T-Mobile. T-Mobile it seems in the presentation, from what I've been hearing, there's very short patience with LTE now. Like there's no more macros that are coming online to support LTE, no more small cells. It's going to be all 5G moving forward from what I'm being told. And during this presentation, Neville Ray presented and gave info that he has been working, and likely for some time now, they've been working with OEMs and vendors to launch 7 to 8 channel carrier aggregation very swiftly. They're doing 4 channels now, right, on the S23. Of course, you will need further future newer device support, whatever the case may be. But they're working towards that aggressively right now. They're not waiting, he said. They're going towards that right now because he's saying that the network is going to be capable. So we are running through that period, and the same thing happened during LTE, right, where the network was more advanced than what the device could do, right? And then towards the end of LTE, it was like, okay, the device could actually support more than what the network can put out. In this case, he's looking to run ahead in terms of the network and what it can do. Right now, they were able to support, he says, 4 carrier aggregation long before a device actually had it on board with the S23. So they've been testing 2 aggregation, 3 channel, 4 channel. They've been testing that. And I'm sure in the lab, they've already been testing 5, 6, 7, 8 channels of carrier aggregation. I truly believe that they have been doing that in the lab, and they want to bring that to commercial launch very, very quickly. Then he also mentions, the 100 million pops with voice over NR being covered this year, sometime this year. I think that's a pretty big milestone for them. Although looking at it objectively, I do think it's going to come with issues, as it did when they first launched VoLTE, voice over LTE. And that had issues, right? It wasn't the best. The call quality wasn't the best. People were dropping calls. People had block calls. All of that, I fully anticipate that to happen during the voice over NR transition. Now, I don't expect it to be at that type of scale, large scale, but I do think that individual markets will have issues with this transition. It's just normal. It's a new technology. They have to tweak it, right? You do test it. You run it on a per market basis. But even then, from the sheets that I've seen, they've only allowed in the testing period, they've only allowed like 11,000, 12,000 calls, right? Once you launch this on the market basis, depending on your market share, I mean, T-Mobile could have 200,000 calls going over that voice over NR in a single day, right? As soon as this is launched commercial market wide. You know, going from 11,000 and looking at that data, right? That running those analytics, looking at, okay, what's the DCR, the drop call rate, this, that, and the third. Once you exponentially increase that to 200,000 calls, I mean, you're going to really see your flaws. And then it's up to the network team to investigate, to fix. And I fully expect that to happen as they commercially launch this voice over NR. I don't expect it'll take long. I would hope for this being a new technology, I would hope that the engineers are going to be locked in. They're going to be looking at this, and that for that time period, you know, going to 100 million, then 200 million. I fully expect this to be a priority for the engineers because they can't let this voice quality affect the business, right? You can't have a higher churn because of your voice quality is going down the drain. You can't have that. That can't happen. Not in 2023. It's already been too long. You got to fix it as soon as you see it. You got to tweak it. You got to optimize it. It has to be fixed. And then, you know, he was also discussing just overall the 5G, where they're at. You know, he went into a little bit more detail in depth. That was his last time presenting at Mobile World Congress. Of course, he is retiring in the fall. So he was saying, you know, he is miles ahead of the competition. And he, again, really emphasizes this during that presentation. He puts up maps. He's saying he's covering 325 million Americans, points of presence with a 5G NR signal. And he says that's a huge lead in that sense. Right now, we can argue, of course, in the comment section and debate, that doesn't really mean much. And I'll be honest with you, it really doesn't, because I have seen several of you posted. I've seen it in other videos where a 5G connection of T-Mobile's performed worse against one of Verizon's LTE connections in the same spot. And I predict that to continue to happen, right? If there's a wide amount of site spacing that T-Mobile is dealing with in that area, you might be on 2 bars of 5G going down Interstate 10, and Verizon has better density and there's a site closer, you're going to perform better on LTE. That's going to happen all day, every day. So that'll be up to T-Mobile to really, you know, push that into the network narrative that, yes, we are going to close those site spacings. We are going to build more towers. So eventually our 5G network can outperform anything that LTE puts up against us for the time being, right? Verizon is going to have to continue scaling 5G outside of city limits, on the road, traveling on interstate highways. I mentioned that in a previous video. AT&T is a little bit further ahead on that, swapping out those radios, but Verizon really took that approach that they're going to upgrade the top 100 markets with C-band first, and then, you know, getting to that 200 pop number, and then after that, they would start upgrading the other sites, you know, along road trips and highways and interstates. So that's going to take them some time to really upgrade and swap out those radios. And Neville knows that. And that's why he really wants to emphasize his 5G lead, because he really does have that. If we're talking just a pure connection of NR with the radios, they got it all day long, right? 2.5 is really expanding now. They're at 265. I hear they're already a little ahead of that. There is a plan in place and then this is just an exclusive, there is a plan in place that if they can get to 300 million pops right before Neville retires, that would be his final announcement. Like, hey, we are now at 300 million pops covered. That's what they're planning behind the scenes. Just a little tidbit for you guys that stick around to the end of this longer video. That's what they're planning. They want him to go out on a good note. They want him to be able to announce at one of those last quarterly earnings calls that, hey, we are at 300 million pops covered. So that's a huge milestone, right? That's going to take like an additional 5 times the landmass to cover that. It's going to take some more densification of sites to really achieve that in a big way. And of course, also, I still think they're going to need some of those licenses to clear from Auction 108, because some of those counties, they have 0 2.5, like none. So I think they also need that to get to that goal. But I truly believe that the FCC is just behind. They're delayed on that. So I think as we progress throughout the rest of this year, I think T-Mobile will eventually get those licenses. So that's just him wrapping up, Mobile World Congress. Nothing else outside of that, really. He focused on the very beginning on rural America. They're driving into that with full force, retail distribution, taking share, lots of runway on fixed wireless access in those areas because there's capacity there, but there's not a lot of users. So you can sell more mobile, you can sell more fixed wireless access off of that capacity. Like, for an example, in a small town that has 200 people, you could probably sell that entire town with fixed wireless access if done properly. You don't have to pick and choose like you would in the urban setting. In a rural setting, there's more capacity to go around because there's not a lot of usage. So just wanted to share that with you guys to close out this Mobile World Congress wrap up. I'll leave this article in the description down below so you guys could check it out. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel for more. Like, share, subscribe, follow the social media outlets, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.